early third quarter. We were no longer in that game, in my opinion. It was a tough go for Utah. We still got a lot to look forward to, though. I think a lot of the teams that a month and a half ago, we thought were big-time Pac-12 contenders look really, really shaky right now. Seriously, I think even some teams with really good records look shaky right now. We're going to talk about it. We're going to break it all down. But yeah, that's. I just wanted to say a lot to look forward to, guys. Same record, if not better, than both the past 2 years. If you guys are still feeling optimistic about the Utes, seriously, smash that like button. Comment down below. Join us in the chat, guys. Follow along with everything. Go Utes. Subscribe to the channel. We put out a ton of content. The next thing we are going to be talking about is going to be ranking the Pac-12 and talking about real contenders, how the forecast looks from here on out. Let's talk about it. Brian, I didn't tell you this in the notes, but I'm thinking we kind of break things down in tiers because I think some of these teams are going to be tough to say, like 5 and 6 and 7 and 8. I think we got to go. We'll just break it down in 4 tiers. I'm going to say the top tier. I'll go ahead and get started. Let me go ahead and put all the Pac-12 standings on the screen here. We got it on the screen for you guys. That is the Pac-12 right there. I'm going to go ahead and be bold. I'd actually say in the elite tier, which I'm going to say is tier 1, I think Oregon is by themselves. I really do. I
agree with you. So yeah, cool. I'll let you keep going, but that is exactly what I was going to do. Yes.
Yeah, I do. I think Oregon looks on another level. I think my concern is not could we get to the conference championship? It's that they did that to us at home. If we did get to the conference championship, what are they going to do to us there? Obviously, any given Saturday, I'm just saying Oregon looks elite. Oregon fans should be ecstatic. They've got a heck of a team over there. So we both have Oregon in a tier by itself. Now let's talk about tier 2. So for me in tier 2, it's kind of tough, but I'm going to go with this. And I know not everyone's going to agree. Washington is one of the teams in tier 2, and I'm just going to quickly touch on why Washington's not in tier 1. And that's because they've barely beat a bunch of average to below average teams the past few weeks. I don't know what is going on in Washington, but I can tell you Washington at Seattle feels like a more winnable game than Oregon at home to me right now. It really does. I mean, obviously after yesterday, but it really does feel that way. So Washington's in my tier 2. I'm also going to go out on a limb and say USC. I know USC is barely squeaking out these wins, but they're 5-1. They're finding a way to get it done. I don't know if that'll be a popular opinion or not. Brian probably won't agree with me, but I do think USC is in that tier. I think it's hard to hate on a team that only lost to in my opinion, the best defense in the Pac-12. And we have a ton of bad blood with them. I mean, 5-1 in conference play is pretty impressive for USC. I'm also going to go ahead and throw Oregon State into this mix. I do think Oregon State had a down week, but that was at Arizona, and it was a razor thin loss. They couldn't get it clicking. Is what it is. And then I'm going to put Utah in that tier as well. So Utah's in that tier as well. We just need a couple things to go our way, and we could be right back in the conference hunt. So just to recap, I've got Washington, Oregon State, USC, and Utah in tier 2. What about you, Brian? What are you thinking there?
Yeah, I mean, we're actually wildly different on this one. I'll talk about USC later. I don't have them in tier 2. I do have Washington. They're undefeated, so you have to put them there. They look beatable. So that's why they're not tier 1, like you said.
They're still undefeated, but
they're still undefeated, but they have escaped with their lives for the past 3 weeks. One of which was Oregon, so I'm not going to hold that, against them. But then Arizona State, where basically a pick six won the game for them. Arizona State should have won that game. And then Stanford was up 33-32 with not that many minutes remaining in the fourth quarter. So Stanford's awful. They're going to be in the bottom tier for me, and you almost lost to them. So that's why they're not tier 1. They are tier 2 because they're undefeated. They look good early on, but they have issues, and I don't know if it's health related. I don't know what's going on with Washington, but that's why they're tier 2. I'm putting Arizona tier 2. Arizona should have beaten USC at the Coliseum. That game, I think they screwed up, and I think they could have beat them right off the bat going for 2 the first overtime. But they didn't. They ended up losing that game. Really close. They played them to how many overtimes did it go? Did it go 3?
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah, it went down to 2-point conversions. So I'm putting them in the second tier. They've looked solid. They beat Oregon State. I'm not putting Oregon State in tier 2. I think they also have issues at the quarterback position and possibly a little bit defensively. And then I'm putting Utah, another 6-2 team. I know the Oregon State fans are going to be screaming, but I don't care at this point. Utah in tier 2. We got nicked up big time this week. I mean, you can't. There's no way to put that less bluntly. We got our ass whipped, like I talked about in the first part of the show. But Utah defensively can keep this team into in a lot of games. We're not going to face another defense that tough this year. I know ASU's defense has held them in some of these games. They actually have a pretty good defensive unit. Arizona can play a little bit of defense. Washington, sometimes they play defense, sometimes they just don't at all. And then Colorado, do they even know what the word defense means? I'm not sure. So we're not going to face a defense like Oregon. We've got that behind us. UCLA, Oregon State, has a fairly good defense. They've shown some exposure though. So that's why I have those 3: Washington, Arizona, Utah, tier 2.
Cool. No, those are good ones. And I would say Arizona was definitely borderline for me. So let's move on to tier 3. I'm going to keep it to 4 tiers, even though as I'm going through it, if you want to go 5 tiers, I feel like 5 tiers makes more sense to me. Like it feels like there's one extra gap here. I'm going to go 5 tiers. You can keep it to 4.
You just do it. You just do what you want, and I'll just
cool.
morph to what you're doing.
Cool. Let's go 5 tiers. So this next tier for me is going to be very small. This third tier, it's just UCLA and just Arizona. It's kind of like they're still in the picture. I wouldn't say I feel strongly that they're going to win. I would say Arizona, a lot would have to go right, but they look really good. Arizona, it's weird, dude. It was like, who would have guessed that Jaden DeLora being out for Arizona was going to be a good thing? I mean, this Fafita kid looks awesome. I was watching the game last night in my hotel room. This kid can go, dude. And they're I think Utah fans, at least me, I knew Arizona was a sleeping giant. They've been recruiting super well for a while, consistently one of the best classes in the Pac-12 every year for the past few years. Jed Fish is building something nice, ton of receiver talent, ton of playmakers, a scary team in Arizona. UCLA, really similar to Utah, not a ton going on offense. Not bad on offense, but not a ton going on. Really, really good D-line, dude. They are going to come and eat your lunch if you do not get that ball out quick. Really good UCLA team. This modern UCLA team actually reminds me a lot of Utah. Feels like, what's his name? Chip Kelly got beat up by Utah enough times to decide, okay, then maybe I should start to head that direction. So that's tier 3 for me, and then the other teams will be in tier 4 and 5.
Is it my
Ryan,
turn?
what do you got going on in tier 3?
I'm typing right now. I'm saying yes, UCLA can also beat USC. Typing that in the chat.
Yeah, dude, UCLA can definitely beat.
So so tier 3 for me. Both of these teams that I just typed in the chat are going to be in that. USC, I didn't put them tier 2. This team can still beat any team in the Pac-12 any given Saturday. They have the talent. They have a really good offense. Their defense is absolute trash, and it's just getting more and more exposed. So, that said, they're a team that can match offensively with some of these offensive juggernauts in the conference and beat them. I mean, it can happen, but they're not the most well-rounded team. So that's why they go into tier 3. UCLA, devastating defense. Their defense is amazing. Their defensive line, both edge rushers are, probably tops in the country in terms of people talking about best edge rushers in the country. We have some of those guys as well, but, they put a lot of pressure on opposing quarterbacks, and they can beat anyone by holding them defensively. They have a pretty good running game. The quarterback position is where they got a young guy in Dante Moore, and then Ethan Garbage started last game.
He was the one we made that he had a rough time when he came down to Utah a couple of years ago.
Yep.
2021, yeah.
Yep. So, I mean, UCLA is another team that I think could beat any one of these teams any given Saturday. So I am going to have them in this tier 3 slot, and Oregon State. Oregon State is a very, very good football team. They have some issues that have been exposed. They played great against Utah. We had some severe offensive issues as well. I think where Oregon State struggles obviously is offensively as well. They're mixing their quarterbacks in and out a little bit more. I don't see DJU necessarily starting the rest of the year every game. So we'll just have to see how that plays out. They have a sufficient defense with holes in the secondary. So that's kind of why I have them in tier 3. But if they put it all together, they can beat nearly anyone in this conference.
Yeah, those are good points. And I would say for me, UCLA is probably the team that was closest to tier 2 that I just didn't put in there. For me, Oregon State and UCLA were razor thin for me. I could have seen either one of them in or out. All right, now let's move on to tier 4. So this will be the tier just above the bottom of the bunch. I've got 3 teams in this one. I've got Colorado. Let's start with the one that barely got to this group. Really, if you would have asked me 3-4 weeks ago, I didn't expect this team to be here, but now they are. Washington State. Washington State looked really good earlier this season, and is just, even though Cam Ward's been playing well most games, they're just not pulling off any wins. They're not getting it done. And I don't see any real scenario. I mean, you're 1-4 in conference play. You're definitely not getting to the conference championship, but I just underwhelming. Like, they just kind of fell off for me, and high hopes, but doesn't seem to be working out this year. The next team, we've got Colorado. Colorado, a team that is playing very, very little defense, and their offense can feel a little hit or miss, right? It's like a big time offense, or it's a very shaky offense. Like, don't forget, there were teams they beat in the 20s in score range, and they were barely beating these teams. I mean, you're not exactly USC. Like, USC has this ridiculous offense with a nightmarish defense, where Colorado, it's like a good offense that seems a little inconsistent with a nightmarish defense. So that's kind of how I put it for Colorado. And the final team for me is actually Cal. Cal almost beat USC. When I was breaking down Cal and early in the season, I knew Cal didn't suck. Cal's like a decent team. I also think like Cal would not be 1-4 in a lot of other conferences. They wouldn't be 3-5 if they didn't have such a tough schedule. So that's how I put it for Cal. But that's tier 3. That's Washington State, Colorado, and Cal.
Yeah, I also have Washington State. What the hell happened there? They they had a team that could be, you know, a tier 2, tier 3 Pac-12 team. I don't know what's gone on at that program. They don't look good. I mean, they've been struggling the last 3 or 4 weeks, probably since that Oregon game. I would say that is probably where they started going downhill quickly. Fully capable, Cam Ward, and that passing attack is very tough. They have zero running game. I think that's probably why they're being exposed now. When you can't run the ball, I mean, they tried to fabricate some running type plays with bubble screens, but I mean, it just doesn't work. You have to control the line of scrimmage, run the ball to continue a high-powered passing attack, unless you just have absolute freaks, which, you know, they don't. They have very good players, but defensively they're a mess out in that secondary. And I think teams can put up a lot of numbers on this team. And this is, you know, a team that's, you know, in the past several years has had a very strong defense and someone you really didn't want to go in and play, but it's just not the case this year. That's why they're in the second to last tier. I'm also going to go with Cal. I agree with you. You know, they're kind of a surprise team this year. They have a very workable offense and one of the best running backs in the country with Ott running the ball. Quarterback wise, I can't remember what's his name. Is it? Can't remember.
I know they were using 2 guys. The
young kid,
Fernando something. When we played him, it was Fernando something.
Mendoza.
I think
Mendoza. Yeah. He has a lot of similar qualities to like a Travis Wilson. You know, real tall, like kind of looks like a giraffe running the ball, but he runs the ball well. He really does, and he throws a pretty good ball. He has a bright future ahead of him. You know, defensively, they just don't have it. And if they had any type of defense, this team would be a very tough team in the Pac-12. One that a lot of others would be scared of. That, you know, they're not going to compete with the strong defensive teams that have capable offenses. I mean, you saw what happened when they played Utah at home. It was just they were overmatched. If they could have a strong defense, I think they could stay in a lot more of these games. And then I'm going to shock everybody here and probably
no, you're not,
and then probably piss a lot of people off with this one. ASU is going in this tier. They looked terrible to start the year, right? I mean, they had nothing going for them. They had no offense. They somewhat had a defense. That defense has gotten better. Their offense has also gotten a little better. And they are in a position where they can take teams to the wire. They can beat teams. They were right there. That was Colorado's only win, right?
Was Arizona State
conference win?
Yep.
Yeah, where and they should have beat them. I mean, it came right down to the very end, and they kind of blew that game. That was where Shadur was flashing the watch in the end zone after beating a team that hasn't won a conference game. They should have beat them. So they're trending, and that was several weeks ago. They also played USC fairly close, you know, not like down
closer
to the wire or anything.
Closer than you think.
And then literally should have beaten Washington had they not thrown a pick six on a 4th down within field goal range. Like I'm talking, the 15-yard line field goal range. Take your points. Your offense can't do anything. Take your points. You win that game. Because Washington had 6 offensive points all game. And this was in the 4th quarter. Take your points. You win that game. That was poor coaching on Dillingham. I thought, you know, I think Dillingham's a great up and coming coach too, which is why they're progressing, you know, upward. And then they go in and, you know, they get the they get the win versus Washington State this week. Their trajectory is upward, and some others, as